Thank you, guys. That was nice. See, I always thought that when I had kids, the only sounds I would hear in my house are balls bouncing and things crashing and breaking. I never thought I'd have a house filled with music. We're good? All right. So a few weeks ago, my family and I were at Upland Community SDA Church where my father-in-law was speaking. And the message that I'm going to be delivering is the one that he delivered. You know, as I mentioned before, when I hear a sermon that resonates with me, I think that it's something that should be shared to others. So the topic was Jesus and Your Will. It was delivered in the form of a modern-day parable. Now, the subject of the human will and its use seems simple to some, but difficult for others. How does the human will function when one is unconverted versus one who is converted? You have a better idea if you are familiar with the life of Saul, who became Paul after his conversion. This modern-day parable describes our journey heavenward. It describes the use of our will, the decisions we make as we live day to day. Now, Jesus used parables to reveal the truth. Matthew 13, 10 through 13 states, "And the disciples came and said to him, 'Why do you speak to them in parables?' He answered and said to them, 'Because it has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For whoever has, to him more will be given, and he will have abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Therefore I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand.'" So listen carefully, as this modern-day parable might just describe you and me. I call this parable, Jesus Take the Wheel. I traveled to Chicago one day and went to the Sears Tower. The Sears Tower is one of the tallest buildings in America. I took the elevator to go to the top of the building. On the 80th floor, the elevator stopped and a well-dressed man got in. I thought I recognized this man. This guy is a billionaire, but I didn't want him to know that I recognized him. We came to the top and started to look at the lights of the city. Suddenly, the man spoke and said to me, "I have a proposal for you." I said, "What is it?" I'm all ears, hoping that this proposal involves money. Of course, whenever we see a billionaire, we're hopefully he gives me some money, right? Now he said, "I want to give you $1 million. Of course, I answered with, "Sure, I'll take it." The man says, "I have 2 conditions for you to have the money." "What are they?" I replied. The man says, "The first condition is that I would have to spend the whole sum in 1 year." I was thinking about spreading it out a little longer, but I thought, it's okay. So I said that amount would cover the cost of the Ferrari I wanted to buy and a little more. "What's the second condition?" "The second condition is that you'll come back here after a year and jump to the pavement below. And if you don't, I'll push you over myself." I looked at the man with disgust, and I left not only disgusted, but getting angry at the man. So on my way down, the elevator stopped at the 70th floor, and in comes a man in white. He greeted me politely, and I greeted him back. He said that he noticed me looking at the lights of the city. I said, "It's beautiful, especially at night." Then he began to tell me of a city that is more beautiful than any I've seen. It's full of light. It's made of gold. There are fruit trees and one that I could eat and live forever. There is a river that runs through the city. Before the man could finish, the elevator suddenly stopped at the 60th floor. A man dressed in black, wearing a hoodie as if he was hiding something, came into the elevator. He had a dark mustache and beard. His eyes were glaring and penetrating. Then he spoke. "I also have a beautiful city. It's full of lights. You will have fun the moment you arrive there." I asked, "Where is this place and how do I get there?" The man in black said, "We could be there in 5 hours, and he is willing to take me there." When we got to the bottom, the man in white walked out and disappeared. The man in black took me to the airport, and in 5 hours, we landed in Las Vegas. Truly, the city was bathed in lights. Any of us here that have ever been to Las Vegas, we know how bright that city is and how much lights there are. I had fun the whole night, even to the wee hours of morning. I overslept and woke up at noon. I went down to the hotel lobby and started to walk the streets. I found a car dealer that sold a Ferrari for $1 down and $10 a week. I got the car and drove around the city. I had fun at first, but it didn't last. In fact, everything I did in that city was enjoyable until it was over. My fun and enjoyment didn't last. After a month, I got tired of the whole thing and decided to leave Las Vegas. I wanted joy and happiness that lasted, something more satisfying. As I drove out of the city, I noticed a signpost that described the city that my friend in white described to me. True enough, this city is 10 trillion miles away. The distance did not discourage me. I was determined to go to that city no matter how far away it was. The 4-lane freeway was nice and I began to pick up speed. In a Ferrari, you could go pretty fast. Pretty soon, I was doing 90 miles per hour on the freeway. All of a sudden, I realized something terrible was happening. There are cars coming towards me, heading to Las Vegas. It's as if I'm driving the wrong way. Occasionally, I would see somebody driving in the same direction that I was going, but because of the heavy traffic coming my way, I really couldn't drive 90 miles per hour like I was earlier. In fact, I had to move to the shoulder and drop my speed from 90 miles per hour to 70 to 50, and then all the way down to 20 miles per hour. You and I know that we can't get to the Golden City anytime soon, 10 trillion miles away at 20 miles per hour. And to make things worse, as I was driving one day, I saw this huge diesel truck also driving on the shoulder, but it was coming straight towards me. It was a huge Peterbilt diesel truck loaded with logs. I started honking my horn, but it seemed like he couldn't hear, and it continued to drive towards me. I really didn't like the idea of having a head-on collision with a huge diesel truck. So before we crashed into each other, I made a hard pull on the wheel and ended up in the ditch. Gravel and dirt went up in the air, and the fender of the Ferrari was banged up. For a while, I sat there thinking of my prospects in making it to the city. The description that the man in white kept on popping in my mind. I said to myself that I will keep on trying until I make it. I got back to the freeway, and the traffic was still bumper to bumper. From time to time, a big diesel truck would drive straight at me, and I would end up in the ditch again. I continued with the journey, but it was the same. Trucks would come at me each time, and each time I would end up in the ditch. So one day, as I sat in the ditch, I started to become so discouraged. I said to myself, you know what, forget this trip to the Golden City. I don't need to get there. I will never make it there, and I was just giving up. But suddenly I heard a knock on the window. I was wondering who this could be. I didn't see anybody on the freeway. I opened the window, and lo and behold, it was the man in white. The man I met on the 70th floor of the Sears Tower in Chicago. He was the one who told me about the beautiful Golden City. Would you like me to drive, he asked. Not sure if he knew the hazards of the road, I asked, have you been over this road? Yes, I have traveled this road before, he answered. Well, I'm making a mess of my driving on my way to the city. Sure, I'd like you to drive for me. So I slid over to the passenger side and he took over the wheel. As we made it to the freeway, a wind blew his sleeves and I saw a muscular arm. I asked him what type of work he does, and he said that he worked as a carpenter in his father's shop. He proceeded to drive on the freeway at 100 miles per hour, and he didn't have to drive on the shoulder either. It seemed like all the other cars going to Vegas were staying out of his way. Going 100 miles per hour, I thought, wow, with him driving, I will make it to the Golden City. I was so happy with this experience, I wanted to shout to everybody, hey, you guys, look at my driver. I had this urge within me to tell everyone about him. One day as we were on the freeway, another of those huge diesel trucks came barreling towards us. I thought, it doesn't matter who's driving. I won't like to have a head-on collision with a diesel truck. So I grabbed the steering wheel from him, and I was surprised that he didn't object or pull the wheel away from me to keep control. And sure enough, because I pulled the wheel, we ended up in the ditch. It is not advisable to drive your car into the ditch at 100 miles per hour. Sure, we missed the truck, but my car was heavily damaged. All the fenders were smashed. I was surprised that with what had just happened, the man in white was still in the car with me. He didn't leave me. In fact, he tapped my shoulder and said, would you like me to drive again? How can we drive this car? All of the fenders are bashed against the wheels, I exclaimed. Don't worry, he said. I know how to fix them. To my surprise, he can fix the damage on my car. How he learned how to fix cars in a carpentry shop, I'll never know. Soon we were back on the freeway, and again traveling at 100 miles per hour. I was just wondering what I will do if we encounter another diesel truck coming straight at us again. Now remember that he told me that he had been over this road before. Not long after, another huge diesel truck came barreling towards us. I remember that every day we started on our journey, the man in white always would ask me if I wanted him to drive. My answer was always yes. Now the diesel truck was speeding towards us. I said to myself, keep cool, don't do anything foolish or stupid, keep your hands off the wheel. He knows how to handle these big diesel trucks. Stay out of his way and let him drive. The truck was coming faster and closer. I didn't feel like doing nothing. I felt like I had to do something, but since he told me he had traveled this road before, I better leave the driving to him. As my car and the huge diesel truck sped up towards as a head-on collision course, I began to be nervous. I opened and closed my eyes. I started to bite on my fingernails. I fidgeted with the seatbelt. I was uneasy and afraid. What got me really afraid was as we got closer to colliding, he sped up to 120 miles per hour. It took every ounce of my willpower, self-discipline, and energy just to sit there. Have you ever heard the expression, don't just sit there, do something? It's quite hard to switch the words around and say, don't do something, just sit there. It goes against our nature or our instinct when something is about to happen that would cause us to fight or flight. We want to do something. Somehow I managed to let him drive. I didn't interfere, and before the collision, I saw the huge diesel truck end up in the ditch. As we passed the truck in the ditch, I noticed the driver. It was the man in black, the one who took me to Las Vegas. The way he looked at me, it was like daggers. Like the expression goes, if looks could kill, I'd be dead. I was excited that the man in white saved my life. I thanked him for what he did. Now I had more reason to tell everybody, hey everybody, look at my driver. He really can drive your car if you let him. He knows all the problems you'll meet on the road and he'll guide you through. So we journeyed day after day. It was a wonderful journey, but one day I seemed to get tired of the journey. I got impatient and reasoned, I can also drive. I've been driving for a long time. Leaving all of the driving to the man in what was a crucifying experience. It damaged my ego. Up ahead I saw a beautiful park. It was an exciting place with rides and other things. I wanted to go there, but I was sure he wouldn't. So I asked if I could drive. He let me drive. There was no objections. I took the wheel and went left. I didn't notice that there was a cliff, and I'm sure you could guess what happened next. We went falling down the cliff. My car was seriously damaged. I lost consciousness, and when I came to, he tapped me on the shoulder and asked, would you like me to drive again? Yes, 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 I answered. From that day on, I decided to let the man in white drive. Surprisingly, even though each time I took the wheel and crashed, he never reproached me for my foolishness. He would just ask me if I would like him to drive. As we journeyed on from day to day, I found myself at the wheel. I didn't know how I got there, but it seemed okay as I saw the other cars avoiding me. But then I saw another diesel truck coming our way. Whenever I saw these huge trucks, I would wonder who was driving the car. Realizing that I began to think, you saw how he did it. He accelerated up to 120 miles per hour, and the truck would end up in the ditch. The experience of driving 120 miles per hour excited me. I felt good because I had a first-hand lesson from the man in white of how it is done. So I hung onto the steering wheel at 120 miles per hour and headed straight to the truck. I don't need to tell you what happened, but we had a head-on collision. I could have lost my life, but before the impact, the man in white threw himself at me to cover me. He ended up wounded, bloodied, and bruised, all because of my foolishness. Isaiah described the man in white's condition in Isaiah 53:5. It says, but he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. After the dust and debris had settled, he tapped my shoulder again and asked, do you want me to drive?" I looked at him puzzled and said, "Drive what? The car is total. It's completely damaged." Come to find out, not only is this man a good carpenter, he was a good body repairman and a master mechanic as well. He fixed my heavily damaged car, and soon we were on the freeway again, headed for that distant golden city. This man could fix any damage I did to my car. As we drove along, I kept on looking at the man in white. I noticed his bruises, the blood on him and his clothes, and the wounds from being cut. I realized that he suffered all of this for me. This melted my heart, and I confessed my foolishness to him. I asked for his forgiveness, and he forgave me. By now, as we traveled together, I realized that whenever I tried to help him do his job, and that is to take me to that distant golden city, I failed. He is the best driver there is, and I am sure that if I let him do the driving, we will reach our destination. He also told me that what he started, he will finish, as long as I didn't interfere. My failures come not because I didn't try hard enough, but because I did not let him drive. At whatever time I find myself at the wheel and there's a big diesel truck coming my way, I made sure he was the one driving. It's either by mistake or by deliberate choice that I find myself at the wheel. I would repent and let him take over. And then we came to a fork in the road. The one to the left is an 8-lane freeway leading to a beautiful amusement park full of lights. The one on the right is not paved. It has stones and rocks and full of potholes. Now, which one do you think my driver took? The one to the right. As we drove to the mountaintop, it became brighter and brighter. I realized that we are near. As we spend time together, I begin to love him for what he is doing for me. I realized that I could trust him for everything. With the man in white driving, I am sure I'll make it to that golden city. In this modern day parable, you can see that the person in the car is either myself or yourself, and the person driving the car, the one being at the wheel, whether by mistake or by deliberate choice, that's the exercise of our free will. And as you can tell, that the man in black is Satan, trying to deceive us of where the beauty and the amusement and the fun, the city lights are. The other cars and diesel trucks and the amusement parks are Satan's devices, not only to tempt you, but to kill you. The man in white, as you know, is Jesus Christ. The journey to the distant golden city is our daily Christian walk. And the distant golden city is heaven. So I ask you, who is your driver? Are you on your own? Do you think that you can make it on your own? Or would you rather let Jesus take the wheel and take you to the destination that he has waiting for you? The choice is yours. For an older version of this modern parable, you can read Ellen White's book, Life Sketches. God bless.